All right, TGIF, everyone. It is October 24th, 2025. The Baker Fairburn Hockey Show is back here on a beautiful Friday in Western New York. I'm your host, Chris Baker, here as always with your Sabres beat writer from The Athletic. That's Matthew Fairburn. You can find all of Matthew's work at theathletic.com/Sabres. We are just going to dive right into things today, Matthew. Sabres have a big, I think everything's important for this team right now, but a big home and home series coming up with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But first, let's just recap quickly what went down on Wednesday night at KeyBank Center with the Sabres riding a 29 save performance in his NHL debut from Colton Ellis to get that win over a red hot Detroit club. Jack Quinn broke out in that game with a goal and 2 assists. He's now tied with Josh Doan and Zach Benson for the team lead with 6 points through 7 games. Didn't see that one coming. Tyson Kozak, another nice game from him. He continued his ascendance with a goal in the second straight game. Jason Zucker and Alex Tuck also scored for the Sabres, while Zach Benson led all Sabres forwards with over 21 minutes time on ice for the second straight game. Coming into this season, Benson never eclipsed 20 minutes in a single game. So now he's gone over 21 in back-to-back. I think that's a significant development in my eyes. But before we get into goaltending, which I think you and I want to talk about with Ellis having a nice game there in his debut, need to mention that Jason Zucker left the game on Wednesday in the second period with an upper body injury. Let's just cover that real quick because, again, we don't know. I guess for now he'd be day-to-day unless you know something different. But just an update from what you know on Zucker. You were down at the arena, and then we should probably just talk about what does it do to the lines now? Because again, it's just been a nonstop situation with this team juggling forwards in and out of the lineup early in the season.
Yeah, at this point, they took the day off yesterday, so didn't get to find out whether he would be able to skate, but he left the game in the second period and didn't return. It was a collision with old friend Jacob Bernard Docker, JBD, and it looked like a shoulder. If I had to guess, it looked like, he sort of was hunched over in that way, but it could have been anything in the torso region. But he seemed to know he was in a lot of pain and went right to the room and didn't come back. So to your point, this team has already dealt with enough injuries up front, and now depth is going to be further tested. He was playing, I guess the silver lining is that he was playing in a bottom six role, and it shouldn't disrupt what they have going in the top six. But obviously they'd been searching for something in that bottom six as well, and started to find it maybe a little bit with Quinn and Ostlund playing on that line. And although Kozak jumping up and playing with Quinn was working as well. So we'll see exactly what happens. They have not yet called anybody up as of the time of this recording. So maybe that's a good sign. Maybe it's just because they were off yesterday. I'm not entirely sure. But that's what we've got so far on Zucker.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, with him, he's leading the team with 4 goals in the first 7 games. So you lose him while your top 6 isn't exactly been this model of consistency throughout the first 7 games. And you definitely need to get Thompson going. You need to get more out of Tuck. So it could be impactful here. I don't think there's any question about that, not just from his veteran presence, but also from the production that he's had here in the first couple of games. And to your point about they didn't call anyone up, they still could. Obviously, I think maybe they wanted to sit and see, with another overnight. Who knows? But they did call up a player, the Sabres, this week, and they brought Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen back up from Rochester to put a halt to his conditioning stint. Luukkonen did get in a game. I don't have his numbers up in front of me, but he picked up a victory on Wednesday night for the Amerks, made over 20 saves, let in 2 goals. So now the Sabres are seemingly having 3 healthy goalies on the roster, but look, it's only 1 game from Ellis, and we could talk about him. Let's talk about Ellis first, I guess, before we kind of dive into the goalie situation. Nice story. Had a whole crew up there in the 200 level in the box. or in the box there, and came out. And I think he looked pretty solid. Did he look perfect? No, but I think it's a nice story. But I think he performed really well in the game. But again, not perfect. But we probably shouldn't get ahead of ourselves.
He had some clutch saves, right? I think that one on DeBrincat, he stopped a breakaway, but the save on DeBrincat when they're up 3-2 and he comes sliding across to make the save with his right arm on DeBrincat, right? A guy that scored 40 goals twice in his career, a guy that scored 39 goals last year, 27 goals or more, I think, in like 5 or 6 straight seasons. Like, that guy's a goal scorer, and it was a good shot, and Ellis got him. So, and, in terms, I think he was 8 for 10 on the high danger shots that he faced, which is really good. So, a nice night. And to your point, a great story, a guy that has really, he does have some of the draft pedigree, right? He's a third round pick in 2019. And we know goalies don't really go in the first round all that often. So these second and third round picks are you know, legitimate pedigree players as far as draft status goes, but he hadn't played an NHL game until Wednesday night. So awesome to see all his family and friends be able to get to town. He is, seems like a really great guy, like just getting to know him a tiny bit in the locker room over the last month and talking to him, more leading up to this. Like, clearly he was pretty upfront, open about how emotional it was for him and, just everything he was going through. So cool to see, kind of a window into his world and see his family all there. So pretty great. And, one thing that I was thinking about before we get into how this impacts the goalie situation and, all the hockey piece of it, this may be minor, it may be nothing, but it crossed my mind that we've talked about, how this team is going to play for each other, how they're going to stick up for each other, things like that. And that shows up in the after the whistle stuff when, you're sticking up for your teammate and, somebody's taking a cheap shot. I think it also shows up in how you rise to the occasion for guys in moments like this. For a goalie making his first start, family in town, he's going to be a little bit probably overwhelmed early in the game, and they go 10 plus minutes without letting the kid see a shot. They played arguably their most complete game wire to wire in front of this guy who, not for nothing, they don't really know, right? He only got here in early October. They know him from what they know in the last few weeks, but not a guy that they've, you know, seen in training camp the last few years grinding away, and they've built this, deep bond with, but a guy that they welcomed in with open arms and said, "We're going to pick this guy up in his first game." I thought that was a small thing, but a little bit encouraging. And now you sit here and you think, there's no reason this guy can't be a legitimate prospect. And I say prospect because he's played one game. And I use that word intentionally because I do think there are some people acting like this guy has now established himself or proven that he's capable of being the number two. And I think we need to probably slow down on that because this is still a team that needs wins and needs to get to the playoffs. So a guy that's only made one start, there's still some unknown with that, but it was a damn good start. It was a fun night and an impressive one for him.
It was a good start. Sabres did allow the first goal in that game, which I think I was chatting with you yesterday. That was definitely a welcome to the NHL moment for Colton Ellis. Just seeing a Comfer kind of corral that puck, go around him and deke him. That's not really AHL skill that does that. That's an NHL skill. That was a moment that he was just like, okay, yeah, I'm here in the NHL. Poor defense on that play by Zach Metza, by the way. The irony of that welcome to the NHL moment is that it was an AHL defenseman in front of him, and that is an AHL defenseman, Zach Metza. Again, we talked about Metza the other day coming off his NHL debut, crisp, but we knew there's going to be limitations. That's another snapshot of the limitations.
Yeah,
But
maybe
yes,
a welcome to the NHL moment for Metza as well.
for sure, for sure. But what I would say too on this whole, yes, I agree with you. It's one game. Ellis has always been a solid goaltender. He's always been a solid prospect. You need to see more. Like there is, I think, a little bit of a knee-jerk overreaction that you can see from fans when this happens. But for perspective, and maybe it's an outrageous example, he has as many NHL games on his resume as David Ayers. So like, let's not kind of go overboard, but it's good. We talk a lot on this podcast about creating competition at every position, at every level of the organization. And this is just another wrinkle to that. So now Ellis is a guy, I think it was October 6th that he was claimed. So there's roughly 2 weeks, right? Because I think, what is it, 30 days? Like St.
You've
Louis
gotta
can just
have
take,
him here
yeah.
for 30 days, otherwise St. Louis can take him and put him right in the AHL off waivers, which I feel like they would have no reason not to. You would also, I mean, regardless of when you do it, you're gonna run the risk that he gets claimed. But based on one game, there's teams that might do it after that game. They get a look at him in that game, and it's interesting because he had some really good numbers in the minors. I would say he rose up the minors a little bit slower, right? He got a lot of time in the ECHL, and then last year had really, I would say, his first full AHL season, and had really strong numbers, pretty good in the playoffs as well. He's a much different goalie in some ways, I think, than Devin Levi. He's much different than Alex Lyon. But really, I think the conversation probably comes down to mostly a Lyon Luukkonen conversation. Like, Lyon continues to be the guy right now. But Ellis entering the picture creates a roster, just some roster gymnastics. It is a good point by you, though, to bring up the added competition. I think it is another move that you got to give Kevin Adams some credit for, because I don't think he would have done this last year. So is this like the Jarmo Kekalainen influence maybe around the start of the season? Like, I don't think he would have brought up Georgiev. I don't think he would have signed him, and I don't think he would have claimed Ellis last year. There was no urgency to add competition around his young goalies last year. In fact, he brought in what I would describe as sort of a non-threatening veteran presence and waived him at the end of camp. Like,
Yeah.
missteps at goalie just last year. We could go back to how they've messed up the position over the years, but just last year, they wouldn't have done stuff like this. They probably weren't even looking at who was out there. And this is trying to improve on the margins every spot that you can. And now, at the very least, you've got a goalie that, you know, I don't know. I don't even really want to get into, will they trade one of these guys or will they not? But it's like you have another lottery ticket. You have another prospect who I still think Devin Levi probably has the higher ceiling, but they're not that far apart in age. And now Levi has a peer to compete with. Before, he had this, he had Luukkonen and Lyon, and because he views himself as an NHL goalie. Well, now it's like, now you've got a guy that is your age, essentially. I think he's a year older, and could be the guy that they turn to at some point if he develops
Yeah.
better than Levi does. So
Well, it's not
competition
like
at all levels.
UPL. It's not like UPL is that much older than both of those guys either.
No,
Let's
that's a good
face it.
point. He's what,
So
26,
26, I
25?
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like he's not
Yeah.
very
I'll
old
double
either.
check
So
that. No. So, and the UPL thing, look, if you're a Sabres fan, you should want UPL to come up and do really well. And in that only preseason game that he played, he actually looked pretty good. It was a game against Pittsburgh. I want to say, right? UPL played against Pittsburgh in the preseason. I thought he looked okay and better than okay. I'd like to see what UPL can do with a fully healthy defense. Get Kesselring back, and then it's like then you have an apples to apples comparison pretty much, or throw them in. What do we think is going to happen now that UPL's up? I mean, UPL is clearly going to play, I think, one of these games this weekend on the back to back. Don't you like why would they disrupt his conditioning stint if he wasn't going to play in one of these games?
That's what I was thinking, because you could have kept him down there a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't need to do this right at this minute, but I don't mind it. I know people are going to say, Ellis had a good game on Wednesday, and so why not go back to him? Well, you have to think about what they have coming up this weekend. Friday night home game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, 7:00. Then a 5:00 puck drop against those same Maple Leafs in Toronto. So they're going to be traveling up to Toronto after the game tonight, and then, have really less than 24 hours to get ready for a game in Toronto, playing the same team twice. You're going to throw Ellis. So how are you going to do that? You're going to play Ellis 2 games in a row? Or are you going to throw him in on the road in a building he hasn't played in? You could go Lion Luukkonen. Luukkonen's got, a bit more experience against the Leafs, obviously has played up in that building plenty. And if he's healthy, at some point you do need to start to see how he looks, get him into a rhythm at the NHL level. It only serves him so much to keep playing AHL games if he looks okay, if he feels okay. So as good as Ellis was on Wednesday, you almost need to give him some time to calm down. I mean, that kid was buzzing. He was really, I think, had a lot of nervous, anxious energy in that game, a lot of adrenaline, and I think you got to pick your spots with him and be smart about how you work him in the next time. But I would like to see them also work him in again. It just doesn't need to be immediately this weekend in a building he hasn't played in against a team that can. I know they're not off to the best start, but they can score. And,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't mind that. And if Luukkonen's ready, you do just have to play him at some point.
So part of what I liked about Ellis playing on Wednesday was a home game against a hot team. I think Lyon needed a break anyways, but for his first NHL game, he's been practicing with the Sabres most of the time in the arena. So you're putting him out in a situation, the sight lines, the surroundings, the bounces off the boards, bounces off the glass. He's kind of familiar with that. What would you think about it if the Sabres put Luukkonen out there against Toronto tonight on home ice on Friday and didn't go to Lyon? Maybe for some of the same, not that you have to do that with Luukkonen. Luukkonen's been all over. He's played. You don't have to handle his first start with kid gloves like maybe you would want to in a perfect world with Ellis. What would you think about it if they put Luukkonen out there on home ice tonight, especially coming off the performance that the team had to start the game against a good team on Wednesday? Does that put Luukkonen in a position to succeed?
It could. It could. And you could make the argument that in what is going to be a tight turnaround and sort of one of those tricky road situations on Saturday. I know they only have a couple hour bus drive up there, but it's a different, road game because of the 5:00 start and all that. I think you could make the case that the calming veteran presence of Lyon might help you there. It's tough because these back-to-backs, they're not easy, and the percentage of being able to get both of them is not always great. And but still, how do you want to what's the game theory there? Trying to maximize your chances, right? Of Lion gives you the best chance to win. And so do you feel like, hey, home game, let's go with the goalie that gives us the best chance to win. Let's go right back to him. He wasn't outstanding against Montreal. And so it's not like letting him sit is like he's going to lose his mojo, right? That's probably the determining factor for me. If, and I don't have access to all the sports science data, but like how's he feeling? How rested is he? And was the one game off enough? Because he did play a lot. So is this a chance to maybe reset his body a little bit? And I mean, I know it's only one extra day, but it helps.
I think I'm going Luukkonen tonight.
How many games what's Luukkonen's career game log against
In
the Leafs look
Toronto,
like? Because
I can pull that up
part of me
eventually.
feels like in Toronto, well, Levi played in Toronto last year. One of the games.
Yeah, here, let me get you career splits
Luukkonen did not
for.
play in Toronto last year. He lost 4-0 at home to Toronto. Lost 6-3. Looks like he got pulled at home against Toronto.
Well, I know he's 0-5-1 in his career against the Leafs.
So now, I don't know, that impacts the conversation a little bit, doesn't it?
I
Like,
mean, they play him. You think you're going to get him in one of the two games. He's going to have to face that demon no matter what. It's whether do you do it on home ice with the team going well and him maybe in rhythm coming off a start that he had on Wednesday in Rochester, or do you wait? It's an interesting thought, I guess. It's like the game within the game, I guess, and how you're managing the goaltenders. And
he did have a
I think,
2-1 overtime loss in Toronto in March of his breakout year, where he only allowed one goal on 20, or no, he allowed 2 goals, the overtime winner, on 27 shots. So a decent game from him up there. It's not like he's been a total failure in Toronto, but he also doesn't have a tremendous amount of experience playing in that building. So worth noting.
Alex Lyon gives the Sabres more of the known commodity at the NHL level at this point. He gives you the best chance to win. I think it's a matter of do you do it at home or you do it on the road. You need to get what do you want to walk away from after your Sabres this week? And obviously you want 4 points, but if you can get 3, that's not a bad situation either. It's not like the Maple Leafs are a juggernaut right now. I'm sure it's overinflated by the media and the fan base up there. I don't think it's as much of a shit show as we're led to believe right now. It's going on in Toronto. They still have a lot of firepower. By the way, they're switching up their lines. They're already doing that. I think they're going with a top line of, they put Marner, or I'm not Marner. See, look at us. I got to reprogram my brain. Matthews and Nylander together, I think with Bobby McMahon up top. And then they've kind of mixed some things up. So basically switched Nyes out on that. They took Nyes off that line because I think he was up there playing with Matthews. So they're already moving some things around. So we'll see, I guess.
I mean, you
But
come out of here with 4, it's off to the races. I feel like they're getting, it's always a hard thing to gauge, but I feel like they have people's attention in Buffalo a little bit, which is a little bit crazy considering they're only 3-4 and they started 0-3. And we know people are skeptical and slow to buy in. But doesn't it feel a little bit, maybe it's the Bills bye week thing, maybe it's the Bills losing streak, like for a couple weeks here, they've gotten to sort of be the center of attention, and they've played some good hockey. Like the thing about Sabres fans is they appreciate the honest, simple, direct game that they've gotten back to after the 0-3 start. The
yeah,
hardworking game, the sticking up for each other. There's been standing ovations in the third period of these
it's
last
wild.
2 home games, and they were calling for the GM to be fired, and they'll probably do it again if the situation calls for it. And I'm not saying those are entirely over, but people are getting behind them a little bit. The building's not full, and I don't expect it to be full tonight with the World Series going on. And I don't think there's going to be as many Leafs fans coming over the border for this one, which is going to make it hard to fill up the building.
It's going to be a
But
huge blow to the Sabres, by the way, because they have these games earmarked as moneymakers for them
oh yeah, I
in a
mean,
situation where they need to make every penny they can.
Friday night against the Leafs, in the past, even if it was 50% Leafs fans, your building's full, you're selling, you know, concessions. It's a nice for a team that the revenue most nights is not great. This is one of the good ones, especially they got fortunate with the Friday night. And
Pete Goalie was a Mariners fan there for a week.
probably, yeah, probably a quiet Mariners fan if he was. And I didn't realize too, like in my head, I was like assuming the Dodgers were the higher seed. I'm, not living and dying with every day on the baseball calendar, particularly as a Red Sox fan. I'm, not necessarily paying attention to the NL West, and you hear all the discourse about the Dodgers. You're like, they must be the higher seed here, and so then I'm looking up the schedule. I'm like, oh no, this starts Friday, Saturday, and I've got to get up to Toronto on Saturday. So luckily they moved that game time. It'll make it a lot easier logistically, but certainly does not make it easier for the Sabres to fill their building. Maybe a good thing for the actual hockey team because I don't think they handle the 50% Leafs crowd the best over the years.
No.
And it can be a real negative depending on how the game goes, and it can be kind of a morale killer. But my point about people paying attention, not necessarily buying all the way in, but paying attention to the Sabres. Bills don't play again until Sunday. You got 2 games against the Leafs. It feels like a really big weekend all of a sudden in late October. They all feel big for this team. You're right about that. Like they all feel big. And I think the team needs to adopt that mindset. They need to be able to flush it when it doesn't go well, but they need to come into all of these games feeling like they're big because frankly, they are, especially when they've had so many division games this week and they're 2 for 3 so far, winners of 3 of their last 4. And now you got 2 coming up here. And look, Toronto's in the exact same situation they are. Other than the fact that when they go on the road, they get to do it. It's an easier road trip, I guess, for them. But it's the exact same situation, back to back. And if anything, they're going to be more distracted by everything going on in their city. So, not a ton of excuses for the Sabres.
Coming into this season, we talked a little bit about left wing maybe being the weakness up front for the Sabres. It's kind of flip-flopped, isn't it, right now with the way that Benson's going and Doan's going? Zucker was leading the team before this injury with 4 goals, like I said. What do the Sabres have to do to get the strength, what we thought was maybe one of the strengths of their lineup going, because I think that's going to be this is I guess this is a series for sure, the home and home. You need to see your leaders step up with all the factors that you just discussed and everything. And, is this the weekend that Tage kind of busts out? Alex Tuck maybe has a little bit extra drops of gasoline on his game and he, plays the body a little bit more and plays with
Still
a
at
little
one
more
hit.
fire.
Still
Right.
at one hit here through 7 games now. And I think it's a good call out by you. He's had some success against the Leafs in the past. And Tuck, Thompson, and Rasmus Dahlin, I would throw into this bucket. All need to be better. And that might be the most interesting aspect of this winning 3 and 4 that they have going on right now is I would argue they've done it without those guys contributing much at all. They're really not playing all that well. I know Tuck had a goal, I believe, in that Ottawa game, right? Was
Yeah.
when he got his first goal, had a goal and an assist. He's got some points. Tage Thompson he's active, but he's definitely not finishing. And I have to double check this stat after the game action from last night. But Dahlin is racking up a lot of turnovers. And
He was leading the league coming into the game on Wednesday in turnovers, I believe.
he
And we
is
talked about that a couple weeks, through 3 games. I think he had 12 because we had mentioned that on this show.
he's
He had a
tied
lot.
for the league lead with 21 giveaways according to Natural Stat Trick. So and only has 3 takeaways.
Yeah.
So it's he and Jack Hughes and David Pasternak's got 20. Most of, the guys at the top of this list are, I mean, look, that stat is one. Darlene's one of those guys with the puck on his stick constantly, right? So, you see Jack Hughes, David Pasternak, Martin Necas, Jack Eichel, Nathan McKinnon, like the guys that have the puck on their stick all the time. But those other guys are also all forwards. You've got Sergachev, Orlov, Riley in the 16, 15, Eric Carlson, 15, not the company you want to be keeping as a defenseman. Werenski's got 15, but Darlene's got 21. And
Mhm.
then over the course of a small, sample size, having 6 more, 5, 6, 7 more than some of these guys is notable because that's an extra, you know, pizza game, and one of them cost him against Colorado. So he's definitely on notice, I think, because you're the captain of the team. You're the best
Mhm.
player, you're the highest paid player. Maybe on notice isn't the right phrase. It's not like anybody's coming to take his job, but I think he should be feeling some urgency to get going because everybody else is. We were talking yesterday, and I think it's a worthwhile topic to bring to the show about on ice leadership.
Yeah.
And I said to you, which I believe strongly, that through 7 games, Josh Doan is their leader on the ice. I'm not rushing to throw a letter on him. I don't even at this point I almost don't even care who has the letters. It's not important to me, and I feel like just as much as there's fans online that are wanting to say trade UPL after one game from Colton Ellis, you hear people talking about throwing letters on Benson and Doan and all these guys. It's like what I like about Doan is that it's all organic. And this is just who he is, how he plays, and he's starting to find his way. It's so early on in his time in Buffalo, but everything people said about this guy is showing up
Yep.
in the room and on the ice. And as far as on ice leadership goes, this is the guy right now that is setting the tone and leading the
23
way
years
for these
old.
guys at
Here we
23
go
years old.
again.
Well, that's why I say I'm not turning this into a letter conversation.
No,
I'm
I
really,
know. I
and I
know.
don't
Yeah.
want it to be that, but in terms of who is, and this is a good development for the Sabres,
Of course it is.
that secondary layer of leadership, right? When your big guns aren't going, not just secondary on ice production, but secondary layer of leadership, guys that can be the drivers for you emotionally and with their play when other guys aren't going. It's not totally uncommon for Tuck and Thompson to get off to slow starts. Darlene got off to a slow start last year because he was hurt. But this is the point where you would like to see it turn. If for no other reason, to your point, they're playing really important games against, if not a true rival, in the sense that I don't know that the Sabres have been at the level to.
It's a rival. It's a big rival.
It's
Yeah.
a historic rival, right? But like they haven't been on the level to have too many big games against this Leafs team over the last few years. But definitely a historic rival, big game. Is it Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday? I guess technically, right? Uh,
Yeah. It should be. Yeah. Tonight's game, by the way, on ESPN
Baseball
Plus,
night.
the
Maybe
Friday game, ESPN Plus and Hulu, as a reminder to the fans.
Saturday is going to be baseball night in Canada, I think.
Yeah. No
But
shit. Yeah.
um, an interesting wrinkle to the whole thing. It's going to be an interesting scene there. But yeah, this is a weekend where you need something from Thompson, Tuck, and Darlene both
Yeah. Your
nights.
best players need to be your best players. Really, starting this weekend and for the rest of the way. Honestly, I mean, you're going to be, before you know it, 10% of the way through the season. That came quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, one hit through 10 games would put you on pace for what? Like 8
8. Yeah.
or 9. And
That's not good.
Tuck last year was a shot blocking, not a guy that's hitting all the time anyways, but a guy that got some Selke votes, including,
Deservedly so. One from you,
yeah,
right?
including from me. I thought he earned them. And so, again, he has started slow in the past, but now would be a good time to get going, to your point, almost, 10% of the way into the season.
So, Zucker potentially being out. Oslin came up. That's something that I thought we could have afforded to see the game before. So delayed his entry into the lineup. They put him in, sat down Geertsen. I would suspect that Oslin and Quinn would be still stapled together there. Is the easy fix, if they don't recall anyone, to bring up Kozak into that line and let him play? You can actually play Kozak at center and bump Oslin out to the wing if you wanted to. Mix and match there, whatever you want to do. And insert Geertsen, because you're not sitting with another extra forward right now, are you? Or what's the injury situation? Because Kesselring on defense is getting close for this weekend. Greenway
is apparently not an option for this weekend.
Okay.
As of the other day, it sounded like Greenway was not an option for this weekend. That could have changed, but I think they're being careful and slowly ramping him up. To your point, I mean, Geertsen is almost the only option because Dunn got sent down. They would have to
Yeah.
make a move. And, the upshot is that they haven't put Zucker on injured reserve. We'll see exactly what's going on there. By the time people are listening to this, we might have an answer. But I do like the idea of bumping Kozak up for a couple reasons. One is that I don't think Krebs is really going. And the other is that it seems like Kozak has a real knack for he's like the guy that's picking up the fumble. When the ball gets dropped on offense, he's picking it up, and that's how he's scoring his touchdowns. Quinn keeps like mishandling or fumbling the puck, and Kozak's just at the net to whack it in. So he's like picking up those touchdowns at the goal line. But he does seem to have a little something working with Quinn. And I don't want to pigeonhole Kozak as strictly a fourth liner because the way he plays the game, and depending on how you have your matchups, he can play on the third line. And Lindy likes this guy a lot. Says he feels like he can play him against anybody.
So does Chris Baker.
Yeah.
And Kozak, defensively, he is actually, not thinking about it on the fly, he could almost be the Sabres version of Bobby McMahon, another player that that I liked coming out of Colgate and didn't get an NHL contract. Tyson Kozak, a 7th rounder, but the way they play and the way you can move them up, I think we're going to see, like I mentioned, McMahon up top tonight with Matthews. A Toronto series, home and home. It is a rivalry situation, at least for the Sabres. Toronto fans will be like, the Sabres aren't even a rival. Yeah, tough shit. You're an hour and a half away. You're a rival. It's set up well for a guy like
hour
Kozak.
And a half, man. Not hour and a half these days with that traffic up there. I don't know about that. But go ahead.
you know what I'm saying?
From Grand Island, maybe.
This is a situation that a player like Kozak's built for. Did you see Kozak in the final minute of the game? He was out there guarding against the empty net against Detroit. You see that play he made? Going into the corner, racing in the corner, just lays a guy out on the boards. Probably the biggest hit the Sabres had all game was Kozak in the final minute. I can't, think of a bigger one. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there were a couple other pops that I'm just forgetting conveniently at this point. But that was a nice hit. That's what he does.
Well, and I believe he was the one that contributed the puck getting out of the zone at one point in that 6-on-5 as well. It was eye-opening to me that he was out there on the 6-on-5 because it's interesting. It feels like he's one of those guys that's been around for a bit now. He's been in the orbit, since I've been on the beat. And so as I was writing my story last night, double checking everything is like, how old is this guy? He's like, he's got to be like 24 now. He's 22.
Like 21, 22. Yeah. I was going to say
22, turns 23.
He's a December birthday, right? Yeah.
Turns 23 in December. I mean, that's an impressive pull right there. That's how we've got the prospect expert right here, knows Tyson Kozak's a December birthday.
December like 21st or something, isn't it? 29th, something like that. It's 12/20 something, I think.
29. He
Yeah,
starts
there it is.
December
No, I know
29.
this shit because like I update birth dates manually. That's why I do all my stuff manually because then I know it.
December 29th, he'll be 23, but it's like, man, this is a young guy still.
Yeah,
And, still becoming, you're seeing for sure some of that man strength kicking in. He's always had the willingness, and now the way he's finishing these hits, like he's just playing heavier. And so I have no problem if he's the one that's up on the third line. This is really straining their depth, right? Like if you have to put Geertsen in for one or both of these games, it's just not ideal. I think we've seen that, in the games that he's played. He's not super useful. You can't lean on him for more than a few minutes, and so then you're shuffling up, those guys in the bottom six, and when you're playing back to back and you need legs, that's a tough situation. So if Zucker can't go, you almost need a recall, but maybe they'll get some good news on Zucker, and they won't need to go that route.
and as much as I'd like to see Rosane or Hellenius, I'm not doing it here. You already made the move to get Oslin up on the lineup. I think that this would, especially, and again, I'm trying to play into Lindy's tendencies a little bit too. Dunn would be the guy I think that comes back up. It gives him that option to be big on that fourth line. Slide Krebs into the middle. You have Malenstein, who had a great game.
Very
Little
good
baby
game.
swag coming off on Wednesday's game from Malenstein. I think, have that Malenstein Dunn option and throw him
Dunn
out there,
scored
discard their
on
minutes.
Wednesday too
He
in
did. He went right
Rochester,
down
right?
and scored like right away in the game.
So I think he's played, fairly well when he's been up too. He's
Yeah,
definitely more a guy that you can lean on than Geertsen, and I also think he's a willing and capable fighter when it
definitely
comes
is.
down to it. So it's almost they're going to have decisions to make for sure, you know, when guys get healthy. And one of those decisions is going to be whether to keep Geertsen on the NHL roster. And if you're going to cough up a player like Ellis and risk losing him to keep Geertsen, I think that would be a mistake. So, but they also, I mean, they're also getting a little bit healthier on the blue line. And so it was interesting to me as kind of a side note and, as some catnip for the listeners. Like Metza a lot, had that, coverage lapse in front of the net. Like, I don't know how long you can lean on Metza, but Metza being in the lineup is it was interesting to me just because old friend Jacob Bernard Docker was in the lineup on the other side for Detroit JBD.
Thanks for
And
bringing this up. Yeah.
he has, and I'm writing a little something for a notebook, kind of figuring out where to fit it in because I did talk to JBD on Wednesday for the listeners, for
Baker
the
Fairburn
readers.
Hockey Show legend,
There's,
JBD.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's his, had a great chat with JBD. He's doing well in case anybody is wondering, but certainly not, I guess, to, throw a teaser out there and give people an idea is like he certainly wasn't expecting to leave over the summer. And so he's got a 66% on ice expected goal share for Detroit. He's playing pretty well. Played pretty well here last year. Capable, you know, not huge guy, but a little bit bigger body. And I remember when I was asking about that in the summer, because I went back and listened to that press conference, and I was trying to drill down exactly what the rationale was on the salary and everything else. But one of the things I mentioned too, beyond the salary, was, isn't there a little bit of an imbalance now on your blue line, like as far as lefties, righties go? And Kevin Adams, made that face that he makes um, when he doesn't love a question. And he said, well, I wouldn't think of it as an imbalance. We've got Kesselring and Timmins, these guys that are going to be big pieces for our top six. But what I was talking about was Zach Jones, Jacob Bryson, Ryan Johnson, that cluster of players that probably made JBD your eighth, right? because that's what Kevin Adams said. He's our 8th guy, and the arbitration award probably would have been like, he didn't say the number, but it would have been higher than the 875 that he got from Detroit. I think maybe between 1.5 and 2.5 maybe would have been the max on JBD in that award. And you could have went and talked to him about an extension to lower that number. You could have went and talked to him, about any of it before, you're just kind of guessing what the arbitration award is going to be. You could have taken him to arbitration and walked away. You could have built an arbitration case. I know that would have required some extra paperwork and whatnot, extra hours, but I bring it all up because they've been put into a spot where injuries have made it so, one injury to Kesselring has made it so that Bryson's in the lineup. You can't trust Johnson in the lineup. I'm not saying that as a knock on Johnson. I'm saying it as what their actions have shown. Lindy Ruff doesn't feel like he can trust Johnson. So you have Bryson or Samuelson or whoever, one of the lefties playing on their offhand, to the point where you felt like you needed to bring up Metza, who just, he's undersized. He's a limited player. And so not an ideal situation to have Metza in your lineup. But it's the injury to Kesselring, one injury to Kesselring, that has created this domino effect. Zach Jones also is a guy that they don't trust right now because they brought him up, didn't play him. And Lindy loves that lefty-righty thing. And so I'm sitting there, Bernard Docker wasn't incredible on Wednesday night, but he did injure Zucker. And, I'm sitting there watching. It was just a little ironic.
He competed, man. Like, even at the end of last year, he competed for this team.
We got in a fight, remember?
Yeah.
He scored, had 4 points in 15 games, played pretty, at the end of the season, Kevin Adams was praising his work with Owen Power. And, you go from praising his work with Owen Power to, I did have to laugh because in that summer press conference, he did say, and I really like JBD. And I was like, I know you do. And
why didn't he take him to arbitration? And if he didn't like the number, just like, why didn't he take the chance? Yeah. Why didn't he take the chance? That's
I mean, there was multiple teams interested on July 1st. And so could you move them for a pick or whatever? But the lefty righty thing is sticking with me because Metz is out there, and Bernard Docker is definitely a more reliable player than Metza, and definitely has more upside. I think there's still some runway here for Bernard Docker to become something more. Not saying for sure that he will, but first round pick in 2018, defenseman can take some time. He's had some injuries. I don't know. Something I was thinking about, and I'm sure some of the podcast listeners were as well. I know we've got a big JBD fan club here.
Yeah, we do. We do, including us.
Right.
We're clearly JBD fans.
I like the player. I like the guy. He's a good guy. He's like, he's like, I thought I played well here. I was like, so did I, man. Like, for whatever it's worth. But
when are we going to get Kesselring into this lineup and kind of get a look at him? You think they're going to hold him back tonight and try to get him in?
Well, he hasn't practiced. He hasn't practiced.
Because didn't Lindy say this week that he was possible?
I think what he was saying was that it was possible to get him back skating with the team. And he said long shot for Thursday. Well, then they didn't practice on Thursday. So will he be out there for the skate maybe? And then, maybe you hold him off until next Tuesday, but
that's most likely then. Okay. I thought for whatever reason.
Shot. I mean, he hasn't practiced with the team since the injury. So I don't know that you're going to throw him in this situation and risk the injury flaring up again and just putting him in a bad spot. So that would give them, I believe they don't play again until next Tuesday, maybe. So I think they have a practice on Monday, off day Sunday. That would maybe be a good target for him. But yeah, getting him and getting Greenway back, Greenway solves this sort of Geertsen dilemma too, in some ways. Not saying he's going to be out there chucking knucks the way Geertsen might be able to, but he just gives you another body to throw in.
Don't need him to. Need him on that forecheck. Need him just bringing more of what Doan is bringing, Benson's bringing. Just need another guy that has the size and the reach. I'm excited to see what this team can look like with Greenway in there and Kesselring. I'm excited to see both those guys in here. Let's see this team at full speed. Let's see how they do elevating their emotional side of the game in a big series. Beginning tonight on home ice, 7 o'clock puck drop down at KeyBank Center, Sabres, Maple Leafs. To your point, by the way, just to tie a couple loose ends up, and we're kind of doing the so Sabres, Leafs, Friday, Saturday, and yes, home ice again on Tuesday against Columbus, the Kekalainen Bowl. And then just in terms of like a PTI move, okay, top of the show, I said that Tuck scored a goal on Wednesday, I believe, and I omitted Doan. It was the same play. NHL.com box score still has Tuck with the goal.
Oh, so.
But it's Doan that's getting it, I think, on the official stats
Interesting.
tallies. So either way, I just wanted to point that out. They have Tuck, but Tuck still has one goal credited to him on Hockey Reference. So just to kind of tie that up, I don't want someone in the comments saying, "Hey, Tuck didn't score." I'm just reading what
No, somebody's still going to do that. And that's okay.
Of course.
That's okay because comments help the algorithm. So
that's right.
Those who listen to the end will jump in and comment and say, "Hey, listen, Baker tied that up at the end if you kept listening." And
you know what else they're going to say? You know what else they're going to say in the comments? I didn't do the plugs.
You didn't.
Like this video. Subscribe to the Sabres Prospects YouTube channel. You can find the Baker, Fairburn Hockey Show on Apple, Spotify, wherever you podcast. You could please leave a 5-star review. But yes, leave shit all over me in the comments. It's wonderful for the algorithm. To Matthew's point. Matthew, can you do your final plugs before I get us out of here on this glorious Friday?
Yeah, you can find all my work at theathletic.com/Sabres. There'll be plenty of it. I got obviously a steady drumbeat of Sabres stuff coming, and then a few stories that are sort of Sabres in focus in some ways, but have more of a national scope that I'm chipping away at that have been fun. So spent most of the day yesterday kind of reporting some of those out and excited to share those when they're ready. Don't know exactly when, but one should be early next week. One maybe later next week. And then a couple others are a little bit longer term, ranging from, some serious nitty gritty topics to one kind of silly topic that I'm excited to, you got to keep it light sometimes. And, especially even with the guys in the room, I think they can count on me to occasionally come up to them with a real off the wall conversation starter, which is, I like to be that, for them once in a while.
Matthew Fairburn going around the Sabres locker room asking him if a hot dog's a sandwich. All right. For Matthew Fairburn, you can find all of Matthew's work at theathletic.com/Sabres. Go there. If you're not a subscriber, there's always a deal. Go subscribe, help their algorithm. For the production crew, who hopefully is polishing my winter boots, 42 degrees. I got to go out there and walk the dogs. And my piggies were cold yesterday in this office, man. I'm Chris Baker. Thanks everyone for subscribing, liking, downloading the podcast every week. Your support is critical to my happiness. We'll see you again very soon.